Okay, here we go. A special episode of The Horse, of course, and a very special guest, our very own Bella Miller. Good morning, Bella.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, how are you? Pretty cold where you are, but cold here in Tung Chung, 12 degrees this morning.
Yeah, it seems like the weather has dropped. I've got all the hoodies out now, so put all the heaters on. So
Yeah, and people outside of Hong Kong won't understand us. They'll call us soft for, putting hoodies on and heaters at 12 degrees. But we can tell them that when it's 12 outside, it's actually 12 inside because our insulation's so crap.
yeah.
Hey, so it's good to see you the other night on the live stream. Societe Generale ran a live stream in parallel to the Rugby World Cup, the Men's Rugby World Cup draw for 2023. And it was great seeing you alongside a couple of, reasonably big names of the game. Jonny Wilkinson, who's an ambassador for SocGen, and Matt Giteau. How did you enjoy being on that panel and, really on the spot doing stuff live with SocGen and those guys?
Yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I was a bit nervous leading into it, but so we met earlier before we actually went live, and I was kind of just the fly on the wall listening to Jonny Wilkinson and Matt Giteau catch up, and they were just kind of catching up about what they're doing and COVID, and just sitting there listening to them about their stories, and they were sort of talking about what Jonny Wilkinson was just doing before he got on, and he'd just finished a workout, and he was talking to us about how injured he is and what he still does to his body at the moment, and so for me it was just sort of crazy to be sitting in the room with those two guys, and it was just awesome to hear what I guess it's just when players catch up, they just talk about the past and have a little bit of laugh, and they've still got that same banter. So for me, I was just sitting there lapping it up, really.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's what's so good about not just rugby, but all sports, is that, you compete so hard against each other. I mean, Matt Giteau would have played in that Rugby World Cup final, I think, in 2003 against Jonny, and just would have had all sorts of, memories and stories to talk about. And they both had massive careers. And but how do you think the panel went? I mean, you're watching them draw the names out, the teams out for 2023, which is the 200th anniversary of the date since William Webb Ellis picked the ball up at rugby school all those years ago. And not really knowing, that where Samoa might fit into that. I mean, obviously your heritage is Samoan, and not being able to talk directly to that, but we had Fiji there, but obviously you've got massive affinity with New Zealand as well. Did you find it easy to sort of talk about, what the pools would be like? Because there's so few teams still, I guess.
Yeah, like I think when you watch something live, you get a bit excited, and it brings a bit of a buzz. Like they talked about the World Cup last year in Japan, and I was lucky to be there. So like that was a massive vibe. Japan did really well in hosting. So for me, it was just like, that'd be great to be a part of as well. Like to go to France and just follow on, like whether it's Samoa or Fiji, a Pacific team, and obviously to be able to support New Zealand coming off the back of Ireland. They're probably going to come to France really strong. So yeah, no, it was exciting.
Yeah, cool. Well, that sort of thrust you into the limelight a little, and I know you're a bit of a shy person, but all this sort of media exposure is good for you and your future rugby broadcasting career. Let's just do a little bio before we move on, just in case people, don't know much about you. So just quickly, where were you born? Where were you raised? Where did you go to school? Where did you play your rugby in the early days, right up to sort of, I guess, coming to Hong Kong a few years ago?
Yeah, born in Hamilton, New Zealand, Hamilton.
Sure.
Went to Fraser High School. I first started playing rugby. Actually, it's a funny story. My dad would take my older brother to the rugby, and he'd play, and I was always trying to kick the ball around too. So my dad just said, "Oh, can you jump in the under 5s?" And then my brother was in the under 8. So I first started playing rugby there for City Norton, and then carried on playing through intermediate and high school for Fraser High, and then lucky enough to sort of make NPC back then, and then just fell in love with the sport. Yeah. And that sort of got me opportunities within playing with the Waikato team, and then after that I was playing at a MPC. All the names have changed now. MPC game, and I was asked by Daryl Saucer, who was then coaching or helping out for the Manusina squad, and he asked if I wanted to come and put my hand up for Samoa, for Manusina. So I think I was about 18, 19 then. So it moved pretty fast after high school, and then moved on to Samoa. Played a bit of club rugby in Auckland for Marist after that, and then fortunate after the 2014 World Cup in France, Samantha Felsi, my cousin here, gave us a phone call and said if I knew anyone that was keen to come over, and I just said, oh look, I finished the World Cup, I'm keen to come over, and haven't left since.
So that was 2014, right?
Mm.
And so Samantha's married to Wesley. Is the direct relationship with Wesley or Samantha?
Yeah, so again, another funny question, funny story there. They both came over to the World Cup, and they watched a couple of our games, and Wizzy, he was then CCO of Guy Wu, and he asked, would you be keen to come over and play for Guy Wu? And it was just pretty much a race to get the paperwork first, and Sam came through, and lucky enough, was fortunate to come over, and I think Sam won that battle there.
Well, yeah, I got a funny story for you then, because when you guys were playing in the Societe Gen Fast 15s a couple of months ago up at Kings Park, and I was commentating the games with Samantha, and your second game of the day was against Football Club, now being coached by Wesley. And I said to Samantha, oh, look, didn't take Bella long to get the boots out because you sat out the first game. And she said, oh, yeah, no, don't worry. It's because she's playing against Wesley's team. She'd do anything to beat him and his teams. And so obviously a high level of sort of competition between you guys.
Yeah, I think between all three of us, when Sam was still playing and I was living with them at in Yao Tong, where like if we were playing Guy Wu, it'd be quiet in the morning, but then everyone put on their gears and then slowly walk out, but wish each other luck and then see you at the end of the day. But yeah, there's that quiet family rivalry there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's how you sort of came into the Valley family, I suppose, all those years ago. Let's come back to Valley in a moment. Let's talk about Rugby World Cups as we were sort of started the week with the World Cup draw for the men 2023. There's obviously the Women's World Cup, hopefully taking place, I think it's September next year in New Zealand. You've got a couple of horses in that race, possibly. What sort of intel are you getting or reading, or how do you feel like the chances of that event actually, going ahead?
Due to the COVID restrictions?
Yeah, just COVID and being able to get into the country, quarantine, and the rate. Do you hear any news that we don't, the general public, about some sort of far-fetched plans to create bubbles and have teams come over?
To be honest, not really. I think in New Zealand they're preparing that it's happening. World Rugby are preparing that it's going to happen. So all the teams are preparing like there's a World Cup that's going to happen, and I think that's the only way to go with things like this. I mean, no one's ever dealt with COVID before, so I think you just got to deal with it and go with it, sort of. and plan A, plan B, plan C, qualifiers that need to happen in terms of other nations qualifying for the Women's World Cup. So I think the only way we can look at it is try and be positive and hope for it, hope that it happens, so that teams can still get to New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about that and your two horses in the race. So at this stage, you're currently a strength and conditioning coach for the Hong Kong women's team. You're also a current international with Western Samoa, and both teams have chances of still qualifying. So obviously that gets a little bit tricky if they both qualify. But what's the arc now for Samoa? So they beat Tonga last year to take to the next step in qualifications. Beat Tonga quite big, put 40 points on them. I don't think you were part of that, right?
No, that was actually a couple of months ago, actually,
Was it?
or a couple of weeks ago. Sorry. Yeah, so they had Oceania Rugby and World Rugby decided we needed to have that competition or that qualifying game. So they came up with a plan that they would play only New Zealand-based players from Samoa and Tonga. And that was on the back of a big FPC tournament, and there were lots of Pacific Samoa Tonga players playing there. So both nations agreed, and they played that. Samoa has qualified for the repechage, which I think is in May next year. So they're the first team that's qualified for the repechage. I believe that there's one team from the European nation and Africa, so it could possibly, I think, either Spain, Scotland, and then the Asian qualifiers, which Hong Kong will be a part of, which is due to be played in February next year. So whoever wins that one goes straight through out of Japan and Kazakhstan, and if you come second out of that tournament, they will qualify for the repechage. So there's still a lot to be played, I guess, and Africa still need to do their qualifiers as well. So it's there's a lot going to happen in the next couple of months, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's hope it can all happen, and it doesn't really leave a lot of time, does it? If you qualify in May, and then you've literally got 4 months to book the flights and assemble the team and prepare for a Rugby World Cup. That's pretty hardcore. And you must be pretty excited about that. I mean, the chance to play in your third Rugby World Cup. Do you feel like it might be your last opportunity?
Yeah. When I'd seen that the World Cup was going to be played in New Zealand, there's always that feeling like, oh, can I give it another go? Like there's nothing else than playing in front of your, I guess, your home country, with your family there, with all of your family there. So that for me was the most exciting part, to be a part of the World Cup, one in New Zealand, and two, be able to play in front of your families and your Pacific nations as well, because the support you get back home is none other than playing in a packed out stadium in France.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be pretty amazing for sure. So you're clinging on to that, and let's hope all that works out. And what about, actually, let's just stay with your sort of Rugby World Cup history. So Samoa have been in 3 World Cups previously, 2002, 2006, 2014. You missed out on 2006 too. You're probably 16, probably just missed out. But you made 2010, and how you would have been 19, 20 then, and that was over in Canada. Tell us about that. That must have been a big eye opener for you at that young age, traveling that distance and playing in, a Rugby World Cup.
Yeah. So, like I think I was 18, 19, and there was me and another young girl, Essie, that was playing as well. We were the youngest players, and For me, it was just an opportunity, like in my mind, I'd be able to represent Samoa. Who's ever going to get the chance to fly to Canada? You know, who's ever going to be able to play in a World Cup? So being so young, maybe a bit naive, like I was just like, oh, let's take every opportunity. And 2000, that World Cup was just every game I was nervous. I didn't know, I wasn't really conditioned or didn't have that experience at such a level. So coming out of that, I remember every game I was so nervous, so many things going through my mind. What happens if I get things right? And what happens if I get things wrong? Am I going to get in trouble after being so young and maybe inexperienced? That was coming away from that. It was probably the biggest learning curve for me in terms of my playing. So I learned a lot, and you kind of just brush a lot of things off, and every game is like you get as gold, and you get to learn from that. And so for me, that 2004 World Cup was just get that out of the way, and then come back and enjoy a bit more rugby, and try and upskill myself over the next couple of years as well. So that was that World Cup.
Wow.
Fun memory.
And then I think Samoa didn't qualify for the next one, but 2014 you were back, and that was in France this time. How different was that for you personally? So you're an 8-year older version of yourself, a bit of mileage on the clock, a bit more worldly, played a lot more rugby. How was it different for you personally, and for the squad as well? How had Rugby World Cup moved on for the women's edition of it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of background in his 8 years in terms of playing with Auckland Storm and Maris, the club. I was playing with a lot of Black Ferns, so just having that experience, one, playing against them, and two, playing with them. They taught me a lot, and I'd sort of, you kind of just grow up a little bit more. And when you put your hand up for Samoa, a lot of other things come with it: responsibility, there's pressure. You're going into a camp with no resources. You're paying your own fees to get trainings and things like that, and you're just having to do a lot of outside work with that. So for me, that 2014 campaign, going in maybe 8 years, a little bit smarter. We had Peter Fati was named the head coach for that campaign, and he passed away during the campaign. So we had Samoa named their assistant coach to take the lead, and I wasn't a part of that. I wasn't a part of the 2014. They went to Spain and they qualified. And before that, after that qualification, Stella gave me a call, and we had a really good chat about some things, and he asked me, like, let's try and work together. And I'd come back from an ACL injury, a surgery, so he asked me if and when I was strong and fit, would I come back? And we had a really good discussion, and actually not a lot of people knew this. And then I came back into the fold, and unfortunately he passed away. So I continued on with the France World Cup, and had a bit of a lead role in that. I was named vice captain. So again, coming into it was just massive. As a leader, you want to run. You've got different players from different backgrounds coming in from different places. So it was a massive campaign, working with the coaches, and we got to France, and we had England first up. So that was massive. But we were sort of that team that was always going to be physical. We were always going to be good at what we're just being up front, playing Pacific Island rugby, but in the end, we just didn't have that the fitness, the conditioning to be able to stick out games and a bit of the technical stuff in terms of our coaching and how much experience a lot of us and our players had. So France was huge, and again, you kind of reflect on it. At the time, I probably wasn't the greatest player and leader, trying to do everything at one time, trying to run this, trying to, you know, make sure little things are done. And so I came away from that massive, like another huge learning curve. And that's kind of what brought me here, actually, in terms of my coaching and playing. So yeah, you're only as good as the experience, you know, nothing beats experience. So as long as you can keep learning from them, you're only going to get better in terms of style, I guess.
Yeah, and having sort of watched your career here in Hong Kong over those 6 years, you know, I've seen the progress you're making. You know, Valley's had unprecedented success with you, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then also you got picked up by the Hong Kong women's team, and you went to the 2017 Rugby World Cup with Hong Kong women, which for us in Hong Kong was just sensational that, you know, a little wee pipsqueak kind of a rugby union could put out a side, a professional enough side, well prepared enough to make it all the way to the Rugby World Cup. And for you being part of that, I guess your role in that, aside from being a coach, but as a mentor, as someone who's been there before, I mean, that must have been invaluable to the squad. How much did you enjoy that role as almost like a mother hen, you know, as well as being, you know, in your coaching capacity? The energy levels must have been through the roof, and the excitement, just trying to keep them, you know, level-headed and feet on the ground and benefit from your experience.
Yeah, the girls, so we actually played Fiji to qualify. So Fiji had come over and as the Asia Pacific Oceania top, and I was S&C first for Hong Kong Women's, and then lucky enough to be asked to do the backs. So then that campaign, I was actually backs and strength and conditioning coach. And then like just that plan towards the World Cup was just so exciting. You know, just being able to share your story with some of the girls, they're just so like Hong Kong, they're just really resilient. Nothing is yeah, we're going to the World Cup, and I just wait until you get there. It's going to be so awesome. Just one, to be a part of it, but two, just being with your friends as well. And I think that's the biggest thing as well. You're going to represent your country, but you're doing this with like 30 other good friends who are probably going to be like your best friends after this campaign. So as a coach, it was again, in hindsight and reflection, it was like, I don't know how I did 4 weeks on the trot in Ireland, doing your strength and conditioning and your backs coaching, sort of after games looking at GPS figures, and then turning around thinking, wait, who's going to be my starting lineup? You know, how are we gonna teams? How do we play New Zealand? You know, but it was again such a great experience, and one that I'll like, you know, that's a memory to be a part of. And that was history made again for Hong Kong, and the girls just, you know, we didn't win a game, but we kind of won the hearts of the crowd just by, we were the smallest team there, and the girls would just continue getting up, which, you know, they get up and they just turn around in the morning, go to breakfast, and, you know, there's England team walking around that are like 6 feet tall, and then the Black Ferns come in and they're like, you know, they're huge props, and then they're tall locks, and our girls are just having breakfast, just morning, you know, and, you know, like that's that's the sort of stuff that you look at and you just think, man, this is so cool to be a part of, to see the girls like, yeah, we can be here, and yeah, we are here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very exciting for us as well, watching from the outside, and just mind blowing to have a team in that World Cup. And like me, I have two teams in Rugby World Cups, when Hong Kong and New Zealand can make it.
Yeah.
Look, tell me about how women's rugby has progressed, since the first Rugby World Cup maybe that you went to, and where it is now, but not just international rugby, I mean club rugby. So I've obviously been very close to this over the years, and I go and do the commentary for the Asia 7 series, and I've seen the quality of women's sevens just go through the roof, and it's really enjoyable to watch. It's far more enjoyable than it used to be. The skill levels, the conditioning, the game plan, the organization, everything. And this is perhaps because there's a lot more investment in the game now. You have coaches like Lottie Rakenbula, playing for New Zealand Sevens 1 year, and about 2 years later, he's coaching Thailand women's teams. And Ben Gollings, the highest point scorer ever in the men's HSBC World 7 Series, coaching in China. And all these little unions, really investing, and maybe because of the Olympics, but attracting really high caliber coaches, and the level of rugby is amazing. But not just that, at club level as well. If anyone in Hong Kong, would go down to a grand final last year and see Valley playing Tigers or Gaiwu in previous years, it's a different beast now. And you've been right there at the heart of it, and you're part of the reason that rugby's improving as well. Like, what's your take on it? Am I right? It's the investment, or is it's just sporting bodies are taking women's sport and rugby just more seriously, and women are taking themselves maybe more seriously, that, hey man, I can get in there and I can play this game, why not? And it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think like it's opportunities. I mean, rugby for women's have been around for a long time now. I was playing since I was 5, but they were still playing rugby before that. But I think it's opportunity and exposure to that. And obviously, a lot of work's been done in terms of women's rugby and promoting. I think France World Cup, there was millions and millions of viewers in the UK, and they were all watching and tuning in to rugby. So for me, I think it's like the world is getting behind women in sport, and there's opportunities there, and I think younger girls are growing up and seeing that, oh, well, I could be at the Olympics for sevens. And so then there's that opportunity there, and it's starting from like the younger generations here, the under 5s, and working their way up. So yeah, I think opportunities, but like also a lot of the unions are investing in terms of getting coaches and giving, like for Hong Kong Rugby Union, I think they were probably one of the top, putting a strength and conditioning coach full-time into the women. So investing in that and investing in full-time women's coaches, because you don't really get that anywhere, or a lot of work is voluntary. So being able to, promote rugby through a full-time role, that's also giving another pathway after rugby. So I actually think Asia does a really good job in that. Japan do that really well as well. So it's exciting, and just caliber. So, you could be a sprinter at 14, and then after that, they see you and they think you can be like Portia Woodman's got a great story. She's was athletic back when she was younger and played netball, and then turned sevens. So it's also a sport for all, right? So yeah, there's opportunities there. I think social media is a big thing as well. So
yeah, it's it's an upward cycle for sure. The better the rugby gets, the more people that watch, then there's more investment, the sponsors get interested. I would say watching the final games, the cup games in the Asian Women's Series now. I love watching Japan, China. They are super exciting athletes and two very different game plans, different teams, both been on the World Series, both been, to the Rugby World Cup along with Hong Kong. And then, Kazakhstan. But I love seeing teams like Thailand now coming up and sort of beating Hong Kong every now and again now. And they're probably the third team in Asia for sevens. And then there's the battlers, Malaysia, Singapore, and each year we see a new team sort of come into the series, and that's a testament to what's going on in girls and women's rugby, and it's very encouraging and it's very entertaining. It's something people want to go and watch and sort of get behind and support. So it's in good shape. Now with Valley, you came off a big season last year. You got back the Premiership, Women's Premiership, KPMG Women's Premiership. You won the Grand Championship final. And before that, there had been unprecedented success as well. I think it was a run of 50, was it 8 games unbeaten across 3 or 4 seasons. You've coached, there's been other coaches along the road. But coming into this season, very challenging times. So a big change of personnel. I think 11, you told me, was the count. Babies being born, people leaving Hong Kong, people retiring, people with long-term injuries, and COVID came along after 4 rounds, and put a halt to play. And you were 1 loss against Tigers, 3 wins. What have you learned? Because this is a big challenge for you as a coach to develop pipeline, recruit. And I've seen a lot of players down there on Thursday nights, all social distancing, of course, up to about 60 players. Where have these players come from? But a big challenge for you. What have you learned in those first 4 rounds about, the Valley side? As you rebuild, you had a reasonably heavy defeat against Tigers. And then what have you sort of noticed about those other clubs, your arch rivals, traditional rivals, Gaiwu and Tigers, but also Football Club have invested in a few players and are trying to ramp their game up as well. What did you learn in those first 4 rounds, Bella?
Yeah, I think last 15 for me, we had we could name 30 players, and for me that was really exciting because I had a lot of our second players coming up and playing, and so I was, as a coach, I was coming into the season thinking, we'll be okay. Yeah, we've lost a lot of players, but I didn't want to say that was an excuse. So for the second game we played, we came out and played Kowloon, which also have done a lot of recruiting, and there's some key really good young players there that get some really good go forward for them. So we played some good rugby against Kowloon. So again, I thought, we're going to be okay. Quietly confident that we'll get things ticking over. And then we played Tigers, and I think as a coach, I was probably a bit more relaxed leading into coaching into Tuesday, Thursday session there. Just, talk to some of the key players that we needed. And we came out in the first 10 minutes. I just thought, what's going to happen? Like this is going from really, really good to worse. And how are we going to get our girls through this? And 20 minutes, I think Tigers were out 4 tries. And I just looked around, and our girls were just probably a bit shell-shocked that they've come out scoring. They're the team that's scoring, and usually we're the team that's scoring. So for me, what I learned from that game is you can coach the right game plan, but if your players don't turn up, or if we're not mentally strong enough, then that's where we're going to lack in terms of self-talk and getting ourselves out of that hole. So I learned a lot about our players, and maybe actually in terms of our selections, we had a whole handful of new players playing in the forward pack, and we didn't have too many leaders there. And so that week leading into that week after that, I kind of thought we've got to go really back to the basics and really try and get some key players to sort of step up here. And we had to grind out of that hole again because we had Gaiwu the next week. So we actually really had to turn up. And for me as a coach there, I just thought, you know, I went in quite and quite calm that week before leading into the Tigers, and I thought, okay, we're going to change it a little bit, and we're going to come in nice and strong. We're going to come in very aggressive, and then we're going to have a hard session. We're not going to ease off. So Tuesday, Thursday, girls were switched on, and we were clear about what we wanted to achieve against Gaiwu. We knew that if we didn't turn up mentally, you know, Gaiwu could have had another big field day with us. So going into that game, we actually did turn up. We did a lot of work on our lineouts. So that first lineout for us was, are we going to win this? Because again, this could be a long day at the office. But the girls that came in, they did the job there, and we could actually get some go forward. So in terms of that Gaiwu game, it was 17-10. It was a grind, and Gaiwu could have pipped that game at the end to draw it. But you know, our girls stuck in there, and we made a lot of changes throughout that game as well. So for us, that was a pleasing win. And then the following week, for me, we had a back to back tough games, and we were finally getting a bit of flow. We were lucky we had the return of Colleen, one of our Valley veterans that, you know, she was sick prior weeks leading into that, and she's just got experience and being able to read that backline defence. So for me, that was exciting. And then we actually got Claudia back as well after that. So you knew she was going to come out firing and was ready to play. So we just needed to once again get our heads down again coming into this week, get our little things right about how we wanted to play around the field, and with Claudia's boot, we just wanted to play in the right place. So for her, that was our game plan, and our girls really came out. We came out firing, and we came out strong against that one. So for us, that Tigers was like a massive wake up call for all of us, and myself as a coach, to say, like, you know, we can't be complacent. Each week is going to be tough, and if we get one thing wrong, you know, any team can come take it away from us. So it was actually quite sad that COVID hit. I mean, you know, we got to do what we got to do here, but we were starting to find our form back. Our girls were getting their confidence back, and we were actually getting a lot of our starting players back into the fold. So we were actually getting a bit more flow and consistency into our game plan, and you know, that's probably nice that we've left it at that football club game, and then we can sort of, when we do, and if we do get the chance to come back, we've got something to build off again. So yeah, that's massively what I've learned, and just about, I think the biggest thing for us and our players that are probably new coming in from our second team or less experience is just that mental game, being able to just, if you make a mistake, just brush it off. It's not the end of the world. Or, you know, if you drop the ball, it's, you know, we just try and get it back. You miss a tackle, and you'd see in that football club game, all the girls started getting behind each other and sort of saying, you know, it's all good, we'll get the next one. So for me, that's the learning curve, just that mental game off the field. And for me as a coach, being able to read our players, come in passive, you know, you're going to get a passive performance. You come in strong, prepared, and maybe a bit on edge, your player's going to sit on the edge as well and come into the weekend quite ready.
Let's hope. Unmute myself there. Yeah, let's hope we can get back to some rugby after Christmas, and you can keep everybody focused and mentally and physically in best shape possible. Not easy, of course, with everything shut. I just had one last sort of topic for you, Bella. The other couple of weeks ago, we had a sort of sponsors night at Mr. Wolf, and it only really dawned upon me when I was introducing you and your counterpart for the men's Premiership side, Mark Fatialofa, that suddenly, you know, it just seemed so natural to me. I hadn't really sort of thought about it, that, wow, our two head coaches are, you know, Western Samoan heritage, both internationals, one still playing. Can't be many clubs around the world with, you know, Premiership head coaches, you know, both being Western Samoan. How does that make you feel about the journey and your heritage and coaching sort of side by side with Fats?
Yeah, it actually didn't dawn on me as well. Like, I think it just, yeah, it was crazy. So after that night, and you said that, I thought, well, yeah, you're right. I'm not too sure if there's too many international caps that are Samoan that are coaching the same club side by side. So for me, like, you kind of get, you just become a bit more proud. And I would kind of always say, like, oh, this little coconut is in Hong Kong, like, you know, sort of, oh, what am I doing here? And you know, for me, it's just like, oh, you're putting your mum and dad back on the map, you're putting Samoa on the map. So it's just another proud moment, I guess. And to do that with Fats is, you know, he's been around the club for a long time, and when I first came, he was very welcoming. And when he got the role at as the head coach, you know, we both congratulated each other. Didn't even think of it, sort of thing, until it was said that night. So yeah, reflection and is a massive thing when you get I was just very proud, and I think that's the cool thing about, you know, representing your country. And you know, it means a lot. And you know, you continue to carry your family name across the world, I guess.
No, true. And of course, both also coaching at the national level in Hong Kong. We're in good hands at Societe Generale Valley with yourself and Mark leading the charge. So want to thank you. And also, don't forget, you know, good things come out of Hamilton. So I'm a little coconut as well out of Hamilton. Thanks for your time today, Bella. It's been really interesting hearing about, you know, Rugby World Cups and women's rugby and Valley and all that. I wish, you know, obviously there's a lot of obstacles and hoops to sort of jump through for, you know, club and country at the moment. You've got a lot of plates spinning. So good luck with all that. Catch you down at the Bar and Grill tomorrow for the Valley Festive Food Drive. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you.